In the early days of the DayZ mod, Dean called it the anti-game. This was because it broke a lot of what were considered the basic rules of game design about not frustrating your users, making it a balanced, fair, sort of convenient experience to play and use, nothing that really upsets you, and removing any mechanics which might frustrate players. Also, probably most games allow you to choose a difficulty so that the challenge of the game can scale to the skills of the user, of the player. So almost no matter how terrible you are at the game, you still get to play it all the way through. And the challenges in the game are usually designed to scale up as you progress and your skills improve as you play. A lot of that you do with gamey mechanics. You funnel people down linear paths, you give them HUD elements that explain everything that's happening so you don't have to guess or figure it out. You allow players to save their progress so that if they die they can get everything back really quickly, or they're only inconvenienced as small amount as possible. Again, that's all about minimizing frustration. All of this sort of thing was so commonplace that if you walked up to someone, whether it's a person in the street, a gamer, or a game development studio, or a publishing company, and you said, I'm not going to use any of that stuff, I'm going to throw it all out the window, they'd all tell you that you're crazy, that the game would be terrible, and no one would want to play it or buy it. Luckily, Dean Hall was pretty skeptical of all that bullshit. He wanted to base a game around his experiences in survival training in the New Zealand Army, where he actually ended up needing surgery after his training. He lost about 25 kilos, his hair was falling out, his nails were turning yellow. He ended up with some kind of bowel problem in the end. But at the end of the training, another soldier, gave him a biscuit, and he said he felt so elated over getting this gift from another soldier that he cried for about an hour. So that's the real inspiration for this game, and that's why I think it's one of the most emotional experiences I've ever had playing a video game, and that's why it's one of my favourite games ever. So I actually get kind of pissed off when people start making suggestions about making it easier, putting in safe zones, making it more convenient, making it simpler, and basically gamifying it to make it more like other games. That is absolutely not the direction this needs to go in. But it's difficult discussing this with other players who don't think this way. There was a video posted on Reddit of a gun enthusiast named Hickok45, and he was shooting a Mosin, demonstrating a Mosin with a PU scope, and he found that the first few shots were very accurate, and as the barrel started heating up, it became less accurate. I think it started shooting higher or lower, I can't remember. Someone commented in the thread that it would be really cool if the Mosin in DayZ would do the same thing and start becoming less accurate as the barrel heated up. Another user responded that no, it's just a game, that would be silly and make it too hard. Of course I jumped in and said that attitude is exactly the reason that a game like DayZ hasn't been made before now. You're not willing to go outside this gamey paradigm. But I've had the same reaction when I suggested that helicopters be extremely complicated to use and repair, and vehicles as well. People will just say that it's a game and it should be like other games. Well, fuck that. This isn't like other games, it's completely different. Let's not water it down. Why waste this opportunity and make another fucking mediocre game that gives everything to the player on a silver plate and doesn't challenge them, doesn't upset them, does everything it can not to ruffle feathers? Let's not let this whole thing slide into mediocrity. And if that's not your cup of tea, there are apparently lots of games coming out in the future which will suit your purposes. Like, it seems like H1Z1 is going to be a lot more gamey. It'll be really professionally produced, unlike some of the past DayZ imitators. So it'll be nice to see a lot of people, I think, migrate over to that, so DayZ can just do what it does best. Also, I hope the humanity system from the mod never comes back. I think that was a real misstep in the design. And ever since then, people have started using the term bandit for anyone who kills other players, and hero and survivor. These are really contrived definitions. They don't really reflect anything in reality. A bandit is really, it's someone who's an outlaw, someone who might rob others and take their stuff. It's not necessarily someone who kills every fucking one they see. That's just a murderer, that's just a thrill killer. And there's no problem with those people appearing in the game, doing whatever the hell they want and trying to grief other players. I actually don't mind that, as long as they're not glitching or cheating somehow. But with the way basic survival isn't very hard in the game at the moment, in the standalone, health isn't very hard to take care of. It's not very difficult to find items if you just put in the time to search for it. There's not really much of a need to be a bandit. You don't have to steal from other people unless you just want to gear up quicker. So I think the planned global item management, loot management, makes a difference to that, because you'll be able to set the rarity of items across the board, across all servers. So you'll be able to have items, for example, which only one of them can appear in the world, and if that one player has it, that's it. If you want it, you have to take it from them. Things like that are coming up in the future. The game's still in pretty early development, but if you're one of those people who wants things like safe zones, you want easier to get loot, and you want a nice, smooth and shallow learning curve, things like that, there might be other games out there that suit you better. DayZ is not one of them, and please don't make suggestions that will compromise its unforgiving and realistic and harsh nature. That reminds me, let's talk about realism. Yes, realism is a very important part of this game. But when people are talking about this, they take it to such fucking extremes. It drives me crazy. A common strawman argument that is made is that you have to eat food relatively often compared to reality, whereas in reality you could eat a few good meals and then survive for a couple of weeks without much trouble. It really wouldn't affect your health that much. It wouldn't feel great, but you'd survive no problem. The issue with that is that realism in a game isn't always about exactly reflecting reality. Sometimes you compress time and space to fit it into the context of a game so that you can have these realistic aspects. Think of it this way: if you had to eat in the game as often as you do in reality, then you'd basically never have to worry about eating food whatsoever. The average life of a character is much shorter than the time in between meals for most people. And that would actually make the game less realistic, because you're really removing the stress of finding food, and food that isn't rotten, completely from the game. So you just do a little time compression, make the players need to eat more often, and now you've got this food stress. So I think that's what Dean means when he says it's not necessarily about an exact copy of reality, but creating an authentic experience. And the experience of having to stress about food in the game is in a way more realistic, or you might say authentic, than having food work exactly the way it does in real life. So in the design of the game, you have to use your judgment and where to apply this, where to compress time, where to compress space, where to give players shortcuts that you wouldn't have in reality. But what does seem really apparent is that the mechanics introduced in DayZ, or probably better to say the mechanics which are removed in DayZ, create a far more compelling and interesting game than anyone imagined it would. No matter how crazy an idea sounds for a game, you have to try it first before you dismiss it. You don't know what's going to happen until you try it. It's also been said that this is almost more of a social experiment than a game. In some ways it is, but it's a big experiment for gaming in general. And a lot of people are really confused about what it is, what it means, what the future is. So it's really interesting to be a gamer right now. We're sort of on the crest of this wave of experimentation, and the future looks damn good. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope I didn't confuse the fuck out of everyone too much. See you later.